Just if you could put them on silent. What we are going to do today in starting our program, which is a program that honors somebody who continues to inspire us with his commitment and his dedication, and more will be said about that later. But what we are going to do to start is to ask you all to just join us in a moment of silence to somebody who worked with Bram, who has passed away this year, who is one of our patrons, Lord Joffe, and we are going to do a tribute to him, which I think Bram would definitely have wanted us to do. So if we could start with a moment of silence, and I'll then tell you about Lord Joffe, and we'll have a few clips behind me so that you all know who he was and his contribution to our struggle. Could I ask you all to stand? Thank you very much. The Legal Resources Centre and the Legal Resources Trust would like to take this time to pay tribute to the life of our patron, Lord Joffe. He passed away in June this year. Joel was a committed human rights lawyer, a truly honourable man, whose commitment, persistence and determination was combined with great intellect and also great modesty. Both the Legal Resources Centre and the Legal Resources Trust will miss his ongoing support, his critical engagement, and it was sometimes harshly critical, and his abiding interest in advancing the rights of the clients that we serve. Joel was born in South Africa in 1932 and graduated from Wits University with his LLB in 1955. He is widely known for his lifelong human rights activism, including as one of the defense attorneys for the late President Nelson Mandela during the Rivonia trial. In that context, he worked very, very closely with Bram. After leaving behind his human rights practice in South Africa, Lord Joffe continued to work in charitable and civil society sectors, most notably for an organization called Oxfam, and he served as a long-serving member of a trust called the Legal Assistance Trust, which continued to raise support for the work of the Legal Resources Centre during the days of the anti-apartheid struggle, and also for the purposes of supporting our work in times of constitutional democracy. He served as a Labour peer in the House of Lords from 1999, and he was appointed a Commander of the Order of the British Empire, awarded a life peerage in 2000. In February 2003, he assisted with a private member's bill called the Assisted Dying for the Terminally Ill Bill, which would legalize assisted dying. After deliberation by a Lords Committee, the bill was put forward again in November 2005, but did not pass, and Joel retired from the House in 2015. Joel received honorary doctorates from the Open University, De Montfort, Witwatersrand, Brunel, Bath, and he was awarded Freedom of the City of London. He died peaceably on the 18th of June after a short illness, and he was surrounded by family and friends. Before his death, in true Joel Joffe fashion, he wrote a note to particular acquaintances and friends, including the LRC, and in this note he wrote, I quote, "I am writing to thank you for your letters, your emails, your telephone calls, your birthday cards, and other personal messages. They were a great comfort and a support to me, and they have helped to keep my spirits and health and strength, as my health and strength has faded. I have found it very frustrating no longer to be able to do anything useful for others or for myself. I have lived a life that is full, and I am content for it now to end. I think of the times that I have shared with you with gratitude and much happiness. We too think of times with Joel with much gratitude, and we convey our condolences to his family, his wife Vanetta, and his daughters Deb, Lisa, and Abby. Thanks very much, and I'm going to just allow the clips to end, and I would then like to welcome all of you again to this lecture, which will be delivered by our Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. Welcome to you. Welcome to other dignitaries in the audience, and in particular, welcome to Bram's two daughters. We are so appreciative that you were also able to join us. To all of you, our guests, thank you so much for coming. I want to indicate that this is a lecture that is part of a series of lectures that the LRC organizes every second year to commemorate the life of Bram Fischer. And we started with this program in 1995, where the first lecture was delivered by the late former President Nelson Mandela. And in that lecture, he predicted, and I quote, "The lectures that will follow this inaugural lecture will provide opportunities for lawyers and others to address fundamental issues relating to law and society with which Bram Fischer was so deeply concerned, and which are also the concerns of the Legal Resources Center," unquote. Abraham Louis Fischer was widely acknowledged as a key figure in the anti-apartheid struggle. He was born on the 23rd of April 1908 in Bloemfontein. He completed his studies at Oxford University in the 30s, and he returned to South Africa to join the Johannesburg Bar. Although he came from a prominent Afrikaner family, he rejected the South African system of racial segregation and joined the Communist Party and participated openly in its activities. Fischer was a member of the defense team of the treason trial in 1956, which led Nelson Mandela's defense team led Nelson Mandela's defense team at the Rivonia trial of 1963 and 64. Shortly after the Rivonia trial, he was arrested and charged with being a member of what was then the banned South African Communist Party, and he went underground early in 1965. He was rearrested in November of that year and was sentenced to life imprisonment and died in prison in 1975. In 1967, Bram was awarded the Lenin Peace Prize, and in 2003, 28 years after his death, he became the first South African to be posthumously reinstated to the role of advocates by the High Court. In 2004, he was also awarded posthumous honorary degree from Stellenbosch University. You are welcome to this lecture. We thank you all for being here. And I would like to now hand over to the chairperson of our trust, the Legal Resources Trust, Thandi Orlane, an advocate at the Joburg Bar, who will introduce our speaker. Thandi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To the Chief Justice, to Advocate George Bizos SC, to the Bram Fischer daughters, Ruth and Ilsa, and everybody who has decided to grace this evening, having to go through difficult traffic to join us here. Welcome, and we are very happy to have you here. Lest we forget, I have decided to share the full profile of the Chief Justice. I know some people always say, please don't go through the whole thing, but it is my humble view that we shouldn't just say, Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. We should also know the beginnings and be able to appreciate what gems we have as a country. So luckily, they've given me the short version, so it won't take very long. Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng is the fourth Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa since the dawn of democracy. He was born in a small village called Khomakhatla, Coffee Kraal village, in the northwest province of South Africa. He is married to Maphefu, and they were blessed with 3 children, Johanna, Ukhaicho, and Uteng. His educational background. Mogoeng holds the B.Juris and Bachelor of Laws degrees from the Universities of Zululand and Natal, respectively. So it's both the Bush College and the White University. He also holds a Master of Laws degree from the University of South Africa. In October 2013, the University of the Northwest awarded him an honorary Doctor of Laws. Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng started his professional career as a temporary interpreter and was later appointed as High Court prosecutor from March 1986 to February 1990 in Mafeking. He did his pupillage at the Johannesburg Bar and practiced as an advocate at the bar from June 1990 until the end of 1991. He then left to join the Mafeking Bar from January 1992 and later served as the deputy chairperson of that bar association until his elevation to the bench. In June 1997, he was appointed a judge of the Northwest High Court, and in April 2000, a judge of the Labour Appeal Court. In October 2002, he was then elevated to the position of the Judge President of the Northwest High Court. Mogoeng was requested by fellow judge presidents to serve as a member of the 5-member committee led by the then Chief Justice Pius Langa. That committee investigated racial and gender discrimination within the judiciary and proposed the necessary remedial action. He was appointed to the Constitutional Court of the Republic of South Africa in 2009 and subsequently elevated to the position of Chief Justice of the Republic on the 8th of September 2011. In that capacity, he leads both the Constitutional Court and the judiciary. He also chairs the Judicial Services Commission, the South African Judicial Education Institute Council, and the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee. In April 2017, Chief Justice Mogoeng was elected as the President of the Conference of Constitutional Jurisdictions of Africa for a period of 2 years. In August 2017, the Chief Justice was appointed as Chancellor by the University of KwaZulu-Natal for a period of 4 years. I welcome our Chief Justice, and it is an honor, sir, to have you addressing Bram Fischer 2017.
The program director, Ms. Tandy Olaine, the Bram Fischer family, Ms. Janet Love, Advocate George Bezos, SC, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you. It's an honor and a privilege for me to have been invited to address this meeting, to deliver this lecture. At such a time as this, I believe very strongly that whenever occasion arises for one to deliver a lecture relating to a giant such as Bram Fischer. That ought to challenge the speaker and the audience to reflect on what that life says to them now, what that life requires of them to do now. How interesting that it happens to be at the Apartheid Museum that this lecture takes place, and not so long after commemorating or observing Heritage Day. But perhaps it's proper that I quote what Madiba said when he delivered the inaugural lecture. This is what he had to say about this great patriot. He said, Bram was a courageous man who followed the most difficult course any person could choose to follow. He challenged his own people because he felt that what they were doing was morally wrong. As an Afrikaner whose conscience forced him to reject his own heritage and be ostracized by his own people, he showed a level of courage and sacrifice that was in a class by itself. I fought only against injustice, not against my own people. Shortly after his arrest that led to him being sentenced to life imprisonment, Bram Fischer was asked whether his sacrifice of family and legal practice, being hunted as an outlaw, and the inevitable harsh punishment that was to follow was worth the gains of leading the underground struggle for less than a year. He was offended by the question. He replied sharply, "Did you ask Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki, or Kefi Kathrada, or any others that have already suffered this punishment? If not, why do you ask me?" Tata Madiba went on to say, even his political opponents would agree with us, his comrades, that Bram Fischer could have become Prime Minister or the Chief Justice of South Africa if he had chosen to follow the narrow path of Afrikaner nationalism. He chose instead the long and hard road to freedom, not only for himself, but for all of us. He chose the road that had to pass through the jail. He traveled it with courage and dignity. He served as an example to many who followed him. Many have asked what in his life led Bram to choose between the privileges offered to him by the system and the imprisonment and the harsh condemnation that he knew he would suffer, close quote. But let me add to that the privileged background that he came from. His grandfather was the Prime Minister of the Free State colony, Orange River colony. His father was not only a Supreme Court judge, but ended up being the judge president of the division in that province. Now the challenge to all of us at such a time as this is, what choice have you made, or what choices are you making? Is it friendship with those who have the capacity to make you wealthy or give you positions? Or is it a noble cause similar to that which was followed by Bram Fischer? This is a question that every black and white South African must answer and answer honestly. Why is it that so many years after Bram Fischer had discovered this truth, that there really isn't any fundamental difference between a black and a white woman, a black and a white man, a man and a woman, but color and gender, that we still find it possible to keep in our boots or the back seats of our vehicles cricket bats, so that if a person of a particular race drives in a manner that I disapprove of, I can bash his or her head. Whether death ensues or madness ensues is none of my business. How could we have forgotten the sacrifice of the likes of Bram Fischer so easily? Particularly at the time when life imprisonment, death in the hands of the police is too distant a possibility to fear. Bram Fischer spoke time and time again about what his conscience would not allow him to do. Maybe I should go there. He had something to say about the choices that he was forced to make in the face of an unjust, or what he called an organized system of oppression, and the laws that it made. He says, the laws, and that was during his trial, speaking from the dock. So the laws under which I'm being persecuted were enacted for the purpose of silencing the opposition of the large majority of our citizens to a government intent upon depriving them solely on account of their color, of the most elementary human rights, of the right to freedom and happiness, the right to live together with their families wherever they might choose, to earn their livelihoods to the best of their abilities, to rear and educate their children in a civilized fashion, to take part in the administration of their country and obtain a fair share of the wealth they produce, in short, to live as human beings. My conscience does not permit me to afford these laws such recognition as even a plea of guilty would involve. Hence, though I shall be convicted by this court, I cannot plead guilty. I believe the future may well say that I acted correctly. Where does your conscience, if you still have any, point you to? Do you ever think about the multitudes that are homeless, the multitudes that still have bridges, street corners, and at best, in quotes, shacks for accommodation? Or is it all about you and your family? Have you fallen so much in love with money, or maybe I shouldn't say you, have we fallen so much in love with money and power and position and fame and prestige that human life and human suffering doesn't matter anymore? What is it that we read about Bram Fischer for? Is it just to engage in a good intellectual exercise? Is it just to stimulate our thinking? Has that which Bram Fischer fought and died for lost relevance to South Africa and her people? What is it I read from particularly the speech or the statement that he made from the dock, that his concern was not only racial discrimination, that, by the way, seems to be rearing its ugly head with much gusto and confidence these days, but also the landlessness of the indigenous people of this country, as well as exclusivity in relation to meaningful participation in the economy of this country. Here is the challenge. He was a man of peace. He wanted both black and white South Africans to come together and to find a solution that will ensure that we all, not some, benefit from the great wealth that our country has available for us to enjoy. He's one of those who lived to help us understand that the wealth of South Africa is almost immeasurable. None of us should think that if others are to share, we will be without. Black people don't have to muzzle white people out of what they have in order to survive or thrive. And white people don't have to act as if they are yearning for the bad old days or good old days in quotes, when racial exclusivity explain privilege and dignity. Does this day not present a golden opportunity to all of us as South Africans, black and white, to really engage or indulge in a brutal self-introspection? Where are we taking this country to? These debates that have the effect only of driving a huge wedge between black and white people, what are we hoping to achieve through it? Do we ever think about the future of our children and our grandchildren, that we are inadvertently burdening them with future battles, tensions, divisions, and maybe even bloodshed, that we, with the benefit of a fresh memory of the painful and shameful history that we have lived through, can help to arrest now? South Africans, please, 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 let us pause and reflect on the selflessness of the likes of Bram Fischer. He had really, strictly speaking, nothing to gain from joining the Communist Party, associating himself with black people that many saw as radicals. He could, as Madiba said, had he chosen racial supremacy as a way of life, he could easily have taken over from his father as prime minister, his grandfather, I beg your pardon, become judge, president, or chief justice. He could have been one of the multi-millionaires or multi-billionaires of South Africa. Just imagine the wisdom and his legal skills for him to have led George Bezos and Arthur Chaskalson as his juniors during the Rivonia trial. Who is fit to lead Arthur Chaskalson and George Bezos in a trial? Must be an extraordinarily competent lawyer. To those of us who are lawyers, do we ever think about the inexplicable inequality in our country when we mark fees or when we determine fees? I almost fell off my chair some 5 years ago when an advocate was appearing before us in the Constitutional Court, and a colleague said, "You know how much this man is charging for one day?" I said, "No." He said, 250,000. I said, "One day?" I was shocked to subsequently learn that one has charged 450,000. Do we ever, if it is true that it's not an exception, but a rule that people in pursuit of wealth charge in a manner that makes the concept of access to justice a mockery, do we ever think about the poor? I come from a meeting today, I learned that some of the people who do the road accident fund matters, when, say, 20 million or 100 million is paid by the road accident fund, a huge chunk of the money goes to the experts and the legal representatives as if they were themselves the injured people. Do we ever reflect on the Bram Fischers who paid the ultimate price, imprisoned for so many years, just to make sure, not that whites benefit, not that black people benefit, but that humanity benefits from what South Africa has to offer. I beg of you, leaving this place, wherever we might be coming from, reflect on the possibility of forming think tanks. Let us have as many as we can, whose responsibility is to reflect on where we come from, why notwithstanding the constitutional dispensation that is our heritage, the constitutional democracy that is a heritage to be proud of, sacrificed for by, among others, Bram Fischer. Why is it that we are where we are right now, as divided as we are along racial lines, using the opportunities that we have to pursue other interests and agenda, rather than what is in the best interest of every South African, regardless of color or gender? Why is it that we seem to be spending so much time on sectarian agendas and trivialities when there are so many fundamental issues that cry out for our attention? More importantly, instead of allowing issues around racism to divide us, instead of allowing issues around land restitution to divide us with all sorts of narratives. The ones say, yes, these whites don't want to release the land. The others say, no, this government of these black people doesn't want to distribute the land that is already available and belongs to the state. Can't we use our intellectual prowess and our energies to work out strategies, just as we did with our constitution, to work out strategies around the land question that can be accepted to everybody, black and white, that is not oppressive to anybody, so that we can make more progress than we have made so far, 23 years down the line? Why can't we reflect on why is it that the corporate sector seems to find it difficult to implement employment equity? I was shocked, and I shared this during the launch of the Kim 4 report, that you can, a black person, a white person, same qualifications, or a black person might even have higher qualifications. The salary disparity could be as much as 20,000. A man and a woman, regardless of color, the salaries are never the same. Should we not use the privilege we have, whatever profession you may find yourself in, form this think tank? How do we calmly, no emotions, address these problems? How do we open up the corporate sector for those who were prevented from participating meaningfully, to begin to do so. I don't think anybody is encouraging some entitlement syndrome. We, the people of South Africa, have undertaken to heal the divisions of the past. That's what Bram Fischer died in pursuit of, was sentenced to life in pursuit of. The land belongs to all of us, united in our diversity. We even pray, amen. In our preamble, we pray. There's a prayer that says, may God bless our people, in our constitution. How sad that when some of us say our people, they mean people of their race. Our people in the constitution is everybody who is a South African. May God bless South Africa. That's what it says. So I was told that I have 20 minutes. I don't know how much of that time I have available. Let me try and round up because I've probably overstepped my time. South Africa is in a fascinating phase. It has entered the stage that forces each and every one of us to pause and reflect on what is it that matters the most. We have a brilliant opportunity to unite as we did before, find a solution, and implement it. It is only when we unite that we'll get to the point where we identify leaders who will lead us as the Constitution requires of them to lead us, leaders who will take us to that prosperity that we agreed on the current constitutional dispensation to arrive at. So I can only but beg, in memory of Bram Fischer, who chose not to pursue money, position, power, fame, prestige, or any other thing that we are in the habit of being captured by. Please allow yourself to be captured by the desperate need to find ways of giving practical expression to our collective aspirations as the people of South Africa. The constitutional dispensation that we have crafted for ourselves against all odds bears testimony to the reality, to the truth, that if only we can focus on what unites us, if only we can focus on our common interest, if only we can accept that we belong together regardless of our race, then our country will begin to yield what it has not been able to yield to us all this long. When we are divided, we say things even abroad that chase away potential investors. When we are divided, out of anger and frustration, we say things that chase away investors that are already in the country. Let's reflect on the damage that racial division and racially inspired statements, sometimes made out of anger, have the effect of doing, the damage that it does or have done to our country, our children, and our grandchildren. I wish I could have more time to say, but let me just say thank you for listening. Please establish those think tanks. I guarantee you, through them you'll go far. Now, let me just say this. I must say this about Rwanda. I was in Rwanda about a month ago, where there was an unbelievable genocide. The level of development there, since around 95 or so, is unbelievable. Kigali is very clean. I had a chat with a representative of the Embassy of the Netherlands. He was telling me that at 12, his wife is able to go wherever she wants to go because nobody can touch a woman or any human being, even at 12 midnight. I was, without requesting, privileged to spend some time with the president of that country. So I was told the president would like to have a meeting with you. So we spent some time with the president of the country. I said, how did you get it right? So we made sure that there's no corruption in this country. Strategies that think tanks must come up with. We made sure that we are investor friendly. Those who want to invest, 2 to 3 hours, you've got your license. We made sure that there is no crime because the world doesn't owe us anything. They don't have to come here. Why should they choose us? We made sure that the educational system that is in place is structured in such a way as to develop the skills that potential investors will need and have available when they come here. We made sure that we communicate our policies effectively to everybody in our country. We made sure that everybody, even in the village, benefits from what the country has to offer. You are a poor family, they give you a car instead of giving you money just like this. You must use that car. As the animals multiply, give to another poor family. That we can do if only those think tanks can come into being, if only we can focus on what will redound to our collective benefit rather than focus on petty racial divisions and so on and so on. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Chief Justice. My name is Teresa Yates. I work for the LRC. And I would just like to, on behalf of the LRC, formally thank the Chief Justice for delivering such an inspiring lecture to us on this evening, the 10th Bram Fischer Lecture. And I hope we all walk away from this evening with a vigor and determination to follow our conscience and to pursue equality and justice in South Africa, because that is what Bram Fischer stood for, and it is the principles on which the LRC was founded and still work toward to this day. So just a few housekeeping. At the end of the evening, there'll be a few snacks and drinks. But I just want to thank a few people who've been instrumental in making this evening happen. Obviously, the Chief Justice. From the LRC, the team that has worked tirelessly in the last weeks to make sure invitations, RSVPs were responded to, catering was dealt with, the venue was dealt with. Sorry about the heat in the room. That's one thing we couldn't solve. I'd first like to thank Thandi and Janet for the leadership and the support that you've given to the evening, to Advocate George Bezos, who continuously comes out and supports the events of the LRC, and also comes to the office on a day-to-day basis and inspires us all. To Ilsa and Ruth, Bram's daughters, thank you so much for the sacrifices that your family made in getting us to this point in South African history and law and democracy. We know there's still a lot of work that's being done, and some of us are still working according to our conscience to ensure that we get to the goal that your father had set so many years ago. To the Chief Justice's team, Rihanna and Alistair, thank you very much for all of the logistical work that went into making this evening happen. And finally, to the LRC team, Christine, Noma, Claire, Sankara, Naledi, and Brendan, who were the core planning team for this event. I thank you very much. So to the Chief Justice, we have a small gift. It's just a few LRC branded items to prove that you were here. Thank you. And to everyone who signed in when you came in to verify your email address, that was not just a formality. You will be hearing from us. Tomorrow we will send you a thank you note to thank you for fighting with the traffic to get to this side of town to listen to the lecture. And we'll also invite you, if you feel inspired, to click on a donate button and make a generous contribution to the work of the LRC. Unlike some advocates who show up in the Constitutional Court, we do not charge heavy fees. Our work is pro bono, and we work for the most disadvantaged people in South Africa. So if you feel inspired by this evening and would like to support the further work of the LRC, we welcome you to do that. Thank you.
That's perfect. You hold on to that.